more for you, you feel it. You know it. This is your life, and it's time to go from contender to champion. This is The Show with John Madsen.
Welcome back to The Show, everybody. I'm your host, John Madsen. This is The Show. All right, guys, I got a good topic for you today. For you guys struggling and girls with fitness and wanting to completely dial in your body, take it to the next level so that you can be supremely proud of yourself and feel great about yourself. I have an episode today that hopefully really gets you clear on what you're trying to accomplish. Now, we've all heard the saying, he who chases two rabbits will catch none, right? When it comes to your fitness, this is what I see all the time. Number one, people are trying to gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. Super hard to do. This is a very, very easy way to stay exactly the same year after year. And far too many times, people don't know what phase they're actually in. If you're trying to lose fat, fat loss should be the primary goal. If you're trying to gain muscle, gaining muscle should be the primary goal. Yet too many times people are working out, busting their ass in the gym, trying to lose fat and build muscle at the same time, and they're doing essentially what that epic saying says not to do. They're chasing two rabbits, they're getting none. Now, I've told you about that in previous episodes, so that should be no surprise for the listeners who have listened to this show. But today, I want to talk about 3 different competing goals that you have to be really clear about which one you're actually trying to accomplish. So when I think about nutrition and training for that matter, we'll talk about 3 different circles. So if you can imagine this, I see 3 intersecting circles, each of them in the middle, they'll have a commonality. And I can't remember what this graph is called, but I know you know what I'm talking about, where there's 3 circles that are all intersected, and then you have that commonality piece right in the middle where all 3 of them kind of have the same piece. These 3 circles that I'm going to talk about are performance, health and longevity. That's the second circle. And then you have vanity or aesthetics. So you have 3 different primary goals when we're talking about training, when we're talking about fitness, when we're talking about nutrition. We'll just call it fitness. We'll kind of talk about training and nutrition both when we're discussing this today. The problem here is that so many times we're trying to do all 3. We want to look as good as we possibly can while performing as good as we possibly can perform, while staying as healthy as we possibly can stay. Now, I want you to think of these in terms of a spectrum. If we're chasing performance over everything, then my advice to you would be different. So let's take the extreme of the extreme. In my own life, this is when I was playing in the National Football League. For the athletes that I'm overseeing their nutrition and training, performance is the most important thing. We're talking about 20 to 27-year-olds who are getting paid to do a certain job. Their training must enhance speed, power, strength, mobility, change of direction to the highest degree, and their nutrition has to fuel their best performance. So performance over everything for those people. Next, in the vanity section, in the vanity circle, we'd have figure competitors or bodybuilders. Those who have to get on stage and look a certain way because they're trying to win, to go pro, to accomplish one of their goals as far as vanity is concerned. So I know you're starting to get this picture, and maybe it's an aha moment. Oh yeah, bodybuilders don't actually train the way a professional athlete would train. Bodybuilders don't actually care, to a certain extent, how strong and powerful they are. Most of them are going to train for strength in some capacity. All of them. But they're also not winning powerlifting meets. Powerlifters would be considered more in the performance circle. They have to do certain feats of strength to win their competition. Numbers over everything. Bodybuilders, vanity over everything. And next, you have health and longevity. What dietary protocols, what type of fitness is going to help people live the longest lives in which they're the most healthy? So as you can see, if you've never thought about this before, there's 3 different areas, and my main thing that I would tell you, and one of the things that I think earlier in my career, or even now, I became very, very aware that people aren't aware of this. And I was actually reminded of this having a conversation with one of my buddies. One of my buddies, his wife, had gone through cancer. And so in doing so, he went down a very, very long rabbit hole into nutrition, read tons of books, tons of research studies, because like any person, want to know how to mitigate that cancer and how to get it into remission by doing anything possible. And in doing so, he found a lot of things in the nutritional world that would, in some regard, not be applicable to people who are trying to perform at a certain level or look a certain way. But I think everybody can relate to this situation in one form or another. What is most important to you? And I think as a coach, I'm going to be more aware of asking this question right out the gate. List in order of priority what's most important to you. Health and longevity, performance, or the way you look. And be honest about it. Some of you are going to have a really hard time being honest with the fact that you just want to look a certain way. You're tired of the way you look. You want to know what it feels like to look at the reflection in the mirror and see whatever version of what you think a badass would look like staring back at you. But when you get asked this question, you might automatically put health and longevity at number 1. But in reality, that's not what you want over everything. And I think it depends. It depends person to person. I don't think I know that. For me, it changes. It changes depending on whether you're a father. As I get closer to my 40s, health and longevity becomes more important. In my 20s, when I was a professional athlete, it was performance over everything. My livelihood depends on me looking a certain way. Nobody is going to want me to coach them if I look like shit. So to a certain extent, like the vanity side has to be there for me. So if you're driving in your car, you're listening to this during a workout, or you're just sitting there listening to this, I want you to ask yourself, when it comes to your fitness, what's the most important thing for you? Is it your vanity? Is it your health and longevity? Is it performance? Because until we understand that, or until you understand that, the advice and the things that you must do to achieve that is going to differ. You can, because these circles intersect, they have some commonalities at the very core of each of them that's going to be most beneficial to each of them. There's certain types of foods that across the board are going to make you perform better, going to be healthier for you, and going to help with the way you look. The more out of shape you are, just by staying in the middle, you're going to get great results. Now, contrary, for myself, the closer you are to kind of your optimum body composition / performance, you have to start choosing. You have to start understanding what is most important to you. Is your health and longevity most important? Is your performance more important? And the only person that really knows that is you. So the topic today, and the thing that I really want you to understand, I think that I've opened this up for you to ask yourself this question, then becomes, okay, awesome. I have the answer, John. I want to perform a certain way. I'm an NFL player. I need to perform on Sundays. I need to make this team. What do I do? In that case, for me, I had to weigh a certain amount. I had to be 240 pounds. If I didn't weigh 240 pounds plus or minus, I was getting fined $400. So I needed to find a way to keep that weight on. If you are a professional athlete and you're an explosive professional athlete, your carbohydrates are going to be sky high because you need to perform. You need that energy, and you need that energy right now. I'm working with a college kid who eats on his plan 600 carbohydrates a day, and people are scared of 100. We're dumping fast digesting sugars into pre, during, and post-workout nutrition windows so that he can recover. If there's 2-a-days, you have to recover before the next practice. If you're a person who has gotten to the point where you look pretty good, let's just say me, for example, I'm sitting at 9% body fat, around 230 pounds. If health and longevity became the most important thing, I'd have to change up a lot of my dietary protocols. I'd have to reevaluate what I was putting in my body. Maybe I wouldn't eat as much protein. Maybe I wouldn't eat as much to keep me at 230 pounds. Maybe I'd be okay with weighing 205 pounds and feeling super skinny. But that part of me that wants that vanity, that wants that muscularity, is going to demand of me different things than if I was just worried about health and longevity. And in that last circle, the vanity circle, where the most important thing that you can do is dial in your numbers and hit your macros, and it doesn't matter to you where the food comes from, doesn't matter if it's organic or not organic, doesn't matter where the cows come from, doesn't matter if you eat red meat or don't eat red meat, doesn't matter how many vegetables you're eating, and none of that stuff's important, but you're hitting your numbers and you're going to manipulate your body fat composition, then that's the most important thing for you. And if you're trying to win competitions, then awesome. That's what you got to do. Now, I would suggest that you focus a lot of times in the middle of those three circles so that you can get the benefits of the performance and the health and longevity. But for you, you know your goal over everything else is vanity. I think this is super important. I know this is super important discussion for so many of you who are struggling with what's the right advice. I read this blog, or I read this internet article, or I follow this person and his advice is different than your advice. I think that it's all contextual, and most fitness professionals, all fitness professionals who are worth anything, are going to agree on the fact that you have to get really clear about your goals, and performance versus longevity versus vanity are three different spectrums, and depending on who you are, you're going to prioritize one over the others. The smartest way for me to tell you, and the best way for me to tell you what to do, is understand what's most important to you and spend most of your time doing the things that are going to be beneficial, at least to some extent, to the other two. But you're going to have to skew to one side of the spectrum if you're ever going to see substantial results, or you're going to spend a lot of time spinning your wheels, getting very, very average returns on all your effort. I hope this helps. If this sparks something inside of you, great. I love your feedback. If you have any questions, best way to get a hold of me is on Instagram, John Madsen Official. I love your questions. I love to help. And I would love to discuss this further if you want to go more in depth. But for the purpose of this show, I think I got my point across that these three very distinct circles, no matter who you are, figure out what's most important to you.
Thank you so much for joining us for another amazing episode of The Show with John Madsen. The greatest compliment that you could give us is liking, loving, and sharing this episode with all of your friends. So please go to iTunes, leave us a 5-star rating and review, and then share it online with everyone that you know. Make sure to tag John as well. He loves to hear from listeners of the show. The links for all of his socials and iTunes are in the show notes. Also, if you'd like to engage John for anything related to his coaching, consulting, or programs, please visit johnmadsen.com for everything you'd need to know on how to engage with John offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Show.